Rise up!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, Mr. of Cardinals Talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root from CardsWire.com. The USA Today NFL Wire site covers the Arizona Cardinals, and back for a normal, regular show with Seth Cox from RevengeOfTheBirds.com as Seth and I now do the regular show. If you've been listening, if you are subscribed to the show, which I hope you are, no matter what it is, whether it's through Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, things like that, you will notice over the last week since the start of training camp a new feature to the podcast, and that is daily audio updates from Howard Balzer as he attends training camp. I'm there not as often because I've got the day job that I do that doesn't work because I'm teaching high school in Gilbert, writing articles all the day long, but I can't get out to Glendale for that. And so Howard, as more of the beat guy for Cards Wire, he will give audio updates, like little 10-minute episode type things that you guys can listen to in addition to the content you read on Cards Wire, in addition to the content Seth and his staff have over at Revenge of the Birds, that you can get right to your device. Listen to Howard talk about that. And it's a trend we anticipate happening through the regular season, as well as he will be down at the Cardinals facility at the Dignity Health Training Center for practices and such once the regular season begins. Seth, we are a week into training camp, and it's largely been positive, right? This has been one of the most, refreshing, positive off seasons that we've seen and heard from the Cardinals in years. And it's not even like one of spin. It's just that it's been pleasant. And training camp thus far has also been pleasant.
Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting how they're doing things. I think we're getting used to the new system, so to speak. And I think we're learning about this regime, which is something that you and I had talked about quite a bit. Like, how are they going to work these guys? What's their plan? Things for that nature. And we're starting to see that come to fruition. And, it looks like this is going to be a team that has a lot of talent, but it's also a team that's going to still be a little thin at a lot of spots. And so that's kind of what we're seeing right now, is like there is a drop off, and I don't think anybody is surprised by that, right? Like, there's always going to be a drop off, but it's just interesting to see how much it's already obvious.
Yeah. One of the notable things as we start off is how incredibly healthy, and again, we're going to knock on wood here, as Jonathan Gaddy did when he knocked on the podium the other day. The Cardinals have been incredibly healthy. It's normal, and it's starting around the league. We're not only little injuries, but big injuries happening in the camp. The Cardinals, as of Sunday, when I was there for the season ticket holder practice, had all 90 players available. There was no one who was injured. Like, even John Gaines was suited up. He got reps in practice, and so he's ramping up. But there was nobody who was out due to injury. To me, that's fascinating. And then an interesting thing about the schedule, because as we've seen in years past, there are rules that govern how many practices a team can have consecutively. And usually after that early ramp up, then the second week of camp is usually the most grueling. Traditionally, we would have, like if they report on a Tuesday, and they might have practice Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 4 days, no pads, and then have a Sunday off, and then they go into a 5 day in a week with the pads going on. So like Monday through Friday or Monday through Saturday, you might have 6 days in a row. This year and last year they did that. They did the ramp up. They did a long week in that second week, and then you kind of ease into a preseason schedule where you have 3 days of practice and then game prep. This year, the Cardinals are going with no more than 3 consecutive practices in a row. So they reported Tuesday, had practice Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, off day Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday practice, off Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday practice this week. That will be the red and white practice Saturday, Sunday off. And then they'll get ready for that first preseason game against the Saints. But it's been healthy, and I can't think, Seth, of another year where the Cardinals, one, didn't have anybody fail their physical, and two, didn't have even minor injuries to start.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it comes down to this is a team that's fairly locked in, right? I mean, and we've seen it from the beginning, and you know, I wrote about it a little bit the other day, and it's never a good thing for a kid to get injured. And obviously, we have to be excited that that Kyler Murray seems to be completely back and healthy. But it also seems like this injury, and I don't want to say a wake-up call, but it unlocked something in him that was there, but also that he needed to embrace. And that's just this unrelenting work ethic that he's all of a sudden displaying. And it's not that he hasn't had it, but remember, the biggest criticism was that he wasn't around enough, that he wasn't doing enough in for everybody's everybody else's opinion. And now all of a sudden it's like, I mean, I think you would agree it's basically the complete opposite. Like, this guy is not just locked in, but he is just a complete maniac to
Yes.
which we have not seen.
And we knew he was a maniac, but it was, you know what it feels like? I mean, one, I think the injury gave him the sort of adversity he needed to overcome. But I think it also, I can't overstate the change in the leadership of the team when it came to the general manager. I think you and I know that there were some differences that Kyler had with Steve Keim, and I think that affected how locked in he was sometimes. And while Cliff Kingsbury he liked, I think Cliff didn't give him the specific focus and direction as a coach to lock that in. And Gannon from day one challenged Kyler, and Kyler has responded. And I think it was, one, changing the leadership at the organization, two, having him overcome that adversity, and three, having real responsibility, like expectations given to Kyler other than, hey, you're our guy, just go make us good. And being given that sort of responsibility and a level of maturity. And it's good to see finally. I know people are saying it shouldn't take it until year 6. I think part of it is just Kyler needed to grow into it.
Yeah, and sometimes that's what it takes. And that's what people don't understand, is that there's a symbiosis that happens with great quarterbacks and great becoming great. And it's rarely in a situation where they're not I don't want to say lockstep because that's probably a little too strong a word, but you really rarely see poor coaches, and you rarely see bad GMs, and you kind of look at the guys that have been at the top or the best, and we've talked about obviously Patrick Mahomes. There's not much else you need to say about that, but you look at like Josh Allen, right? He's had Sean McDermott his entire career. He's I'm pretty sure that Brandon Beane has been the general manager the entire time he's been there. And so it's that continuity helps, right? You look at Lamar Jackson. I know they went from Ozzie to whoever their GM is now, but it's basically it was basically a 1-to-1 swap up, right? Eric DaCosta came in, Ozzie left, type of thing. No animosity or anything like that. And you go back and you look at even obviously Tom Brady. I mean, it's very rare, and it's usually just the guys like Tom Brady, well, not even Brady, but like Peyton Manning and those guys who kind of get away with having, because they basically their skill set is above that, right? And not to say that Kyler's isn't or anything like that, but this is this is uncharted territory. And so for him now, like you said, there's this cohesion and this trust that we just haven't seen before. And to see it now, to see the belief in each other, the trust in one another, it is a completely different it is just a completely different guy overall, and that's just not something that we've seen, and now we're seeing it, and it looks completely different. It looks like a guy that believes in everybody, and they all believe in each other, and that's something that is unusual, but also hard to find and hard to kind of explain why that is so important for everybody, right? Like,
Yeah.
everybody being on the same page and trusting one another is just not something that you see very often.
Interestingly enough, it's kind of because Kyler, the truth is that I think what it was is that Kyler went from, finding his way in the league to having his guys to finally opening up to all the rest. Rather, I know he tried to do that a little bit early on in his career. And when we go back to, what was it, 2020, 2021, when he got a bunch of guys out to Texas. Larry Fitz didn't go for whatever reason. We know Fitz had a number of things, but I think this is the first year, and like last year, this year is where not only was he like, he had his guys. It was Chase Edmonds. It was Christian Kirk. It was Zach Ertz. He was locked in his guys. And then last year it started opening up, and he still had Hollywood, which is his guy. And this year he embraces everyone. It's that, you remember Kelvin Beachum said he needs to grow up. He's a man up. And that's really what he was. He needs to open up more to his other teammates. He's not only being a good teammate to the playmakers, the guy he's comfortable with, he's reaching out to the younger players, to the fringe practice squatters and the guys like that who, and he's welcoming them as well, which is, it's kind of fun.
Yeah, and it's just something that, like you said, he needed to get to, and it is just one of those situations that when you look at it, it's about the growth of the player, and as long as they're not stagnant and stuck, I think you can be okay with letting the process play out, and that's what's happened. And now you look at it, and it seems positive, but obviously the proof will be in the pudding and what we see on the field.
The Cardinals did have one injury. Their first injury of camp happened on Tuesday, and that was center Yelda Froholt, who went down with the knee, left practice. It appears that it will be fine. He was seen walking out of the stadium without any brace or sleeve or wrap and was walking fine. He walked off on his own power. Howard said that he was told by a source that Yelda is going to be, he'll be okay. The Cardinals have an off day on Wednesday. We'll be back in practice on Thursday. Perhaps they will give him limited. They will limit his reps a little bit depending on what is going on with that knee. But one thing that did allow for is, we did get to see rookie Isaiah Adams with the first team as Evan Brown slid over to center, and Isaiah Adams came in and played left guard for some first team reps, as did John Gaines, second year pro out of UCLA. And Gaines on Sunday as well got first team reps at left guard. So he is started like, and in my first 53-man roster projections, that was noted. When you see guys that with no injuries on the team sneak into the first team, you're like, okay, I see you. John Gaines, okay, looks like they like what they're seeing. Isaiah Adams, they're giving him an opportunity. We always felt that Isaiah Adams was going to make the team anyway, but John Gaines was like, we'll wait and see. And so we got to see that. Although, Seth, you did note that when Evan Brown went to center on the first team, the offense didn't look as good. And that's the one thing in the times that I saw. And I know this is partly because I was there without pads. The offense basically did whatever it wanted against the Cardinals defense. And that was different in Mondays and Tuesdays practice with the pads on. Not so much with Kyler, but with the backups. The defensive backups were again making plays off the backup quarterbacks.
Yeah, and then that was what I talked about earlier. Unfortunately, it seems just like it is a very, very quick fall off, and we talked about it in our group chat, and it just seems like this, like with Kyler, this team looks like they can compete every day. Without Kyler, it looks like this could be a long year, and that's kind of where you try to figure it out and see how things will work out. And right now it's early, and so there's nothing to worry about. There's nothing to get concerned about. And let's be honest, most of these teams are going to be awful if they don't have their starting quarterback. So
That's true.
But like we said, this is not a team that can withstand missing a guy like Kyler for very long. And it's unfortunate because Desmond Ritter is obviously brand new. Clayton Tune, has not.
He was a fifth-round rookie last year.
Yeah,
and didn't look that he was not particularly impressive.
And that's the reality of it. I mean, when you're talking about fifth-round rookies, it's very rare that they're successful. So we'll see how this goes. But right now, the offense with Kyler looks, again,
really good. It looks really good.
Jess and I have talked about this ad nauseum. It doesn't mean anything because it could just be that they're awful. The defense is awful, but they look borderline dominant with Kyler.
Yeah, the passing game is looking sharper than we've ever seen the passing game.
Well, and that's just it, right? This is year 2, but this is also the first year, and somebody brought it up. Like, you think about this, obviously one of those off seasons was 100% Kyler's fault. Their odd off season with the odd situations and the mini holdout until he got paid and all of that, and then that's over and done with now, so we're all ready to move on. But you look at it, and this is really, I mean, honestly, his first full off season since his rookie year.
Correct. This has been
COVID and then obviously, like I said, the mini holdout situation.
Yeah, well, we can detail the 2019 rookie year. He was a rookie. 2020, no offseason. COVID. 2021, most veterans, the NFLPA told the players, hey, don't go. And Kyler didn't go mostly because he was in lockstep with the players union, with the veterans on the team. Then 2022 was, of course, that was the contract year, and that's the one that got all the attention. Last year was hurt, and now this is the first time he's had a healthy offseason when he's been there for the whole offseason. That's been fantastic. That's been a big difference. Coming up next on the Rise Up Zero podcast, the best of our Cardinals talk on the web. We want to talk about who are the camp standouts thus far. Who is standing out? Whose stock is rising? That's coming up next on Rise Up Zero. We're back on the Rise Up Zero podcast, the best of our Cardinals talk on the web, talking now about the Cardinals players who are standing out thus far. It's mostly been on the on the offensive side of the ball, but names keep coming up that are kind of obviously. Kyler looks great, but you look at certain positions, and early on in camp, like everything about Marvin Harrison looks like it's going to be great. And Greg Dortch keeps making plays, but guess what? Remember the offseason, we wondered what it was going to be. Zay Jones is making plays, and it looks like he's going to cause playing time problems for the receivers in the room.
Well, and this is just such a good thing. I wrote about it today or yesterday. I don't know. Everything blends together. It's Tuesday, and everything's blending together right now. But yeah, I wrote about it. And the reality is, yesterday. And the reality is, like, him being your number 4 receiver is not the normal 4th receiver. He is your number 4 receiver in the sense that he's getting reps at X, at Z, at whatever they call their slot position. Like, so he's like the lead backup to all the positions. So like you said, if Michael Wilson's struggling in a game, if Greg Dortch is struggling in a game, if Marvin Harrison is struggling in a game, if somebody has to leave a game, Zay Jones just fills in. And he's doing it right now. Obviously, it's, 5 days into camp, but he's doing right now really, really well. And like you said, making things difficult for the coaches and what they're going to do, or and pushing to make playing time. And to be completely fair, that's really all we wanted from him, was it not? Like that
Right.
They couldn't just roll the normal team out and not have anything. Like, we wanted this to be a difficult situation. And now you look at it, obviously we knew coming in, and this is not a shot at anybody, that James Conner was the guy at running back. Obviously Kyler was the guy at quarterback. Trey McBride was tight end 1. Obviously something we'll talk about. They want to use more than just a tight end. But there were certain guys or certain positions that were like, okay, hopefully it's earned. And in the competition has been, I don't know how you feel, but the competition has been wonderful to see, because it's
been really, really nice to see. It's not like, oh, good luck.
What we have to deal with. Yeah, right. Exactly. This is 100% like high level competition where you're like, oh, any of these guys could be the guy. And that's a huge, huge thing. I'm just excited about it, man, because it just seems like this group truly, truly cares. And like you said, like, from going out to LA with Kyler, and I didn't know it was in LA. Did you before?
I did not. I couldn't, like, the photo that was out, I'm like, I have no idea where that was. I thought maybe it was back in Texas, so I didn't recognize it here. But the fact that they worked out at UCLA, and he basically treated his teammates to, he paid for the car service, he paid for flights, he paid for they were in what were they, in Beverly Hills, I think it was, the place that they rented out. Hats, Nice. And Zay Jones, like these are NFL athletes that make millions of dollars. And Zay Jones was like, I'd never seen anything like it. It sounded like basically they were at a place like Cliff's house.
Right, exactly. And it just creates a love for each other. And I really can't overstate how important that is. A love and a respect for each other in that situation. It's it's different. It allows this team to feel like they're together and they're chasing the same goal. And that's just not something that it seemed was present previous to this year. And even last year, in Gannon's first year, there's definitely a feeling out period, right? Like, it's not like everything's just going to go straight to like, oh, this is wonderful. Like, they wanted to feel each other out, and now you're starting to see it, and you're starting to respect what they have and who they are, and it just seems like things are trending in the right direction, and these guys truly care about each other and are playing for each other, and I don't think that can be overstated.
A player that was a surprising addition to the roster last year and apparently still quietly is, it appears that he might be a favorite to make the team at running back, and that's still Amari DeMarcado. They're still using him in the first team third down role. Gannon was effusive in his praise, and it was he didn't say he was good on third down. He's really good on third down. He came in with a little extra explosiveness and juice, and that's a guy you're like, oh, okay. And last year there was nothing special about him. Like, there's nothing special about his traits as a running back. He was a backup in college, and yet, in year two, it feels like he's become one of the coaching staff's guys.
Yeah, and it's one of those situations where you look at it and you just see a guy that endears himself to his teammates, endears himself to his coaches, and I don't think anybody can really explain how important that is, as a coach in such a microscopic level to what the pros are doing. You look at these things and you say to yourself, like, I want guys that I can trust. And that's the biggest thing. And it's funny, we actually talked about this today with our freshman team. And it's like, we've had kids that have been showing up since February, that when they were still in 8th grade, and now school started, everybody's in 9th grade, and those are the guys that you kind of gravitate towards, right? Because they've been there, they've shown you what they have, they've shown you what they can do, and they've shown you who you are or who they are. That's what Amari brings, right? Like, this is a guy that is just relentless with his work ethic. Like, he is a guy that, for whatever reason, you just can't get rid of him in a positive way too, right? Like, it's not like we're saying like, oh, can't believe they got to keep it. It's like this guy,
like right now it looks like that a very talented running back in Michael Carter doesn't have a spot on the roster.
Right. And that, like you said, that's just such a baffling thing. Like, if we had talked about this, and we did talk about this, like, neither of us really saw an avenue for him. And not in a negative way, not in a like, oh, this guy's just really not as good, but like, he's not as talented.
Right. There was nothing distinctive. He was like, he's just steady. And when he got playing time, you saw his strength was in his patience as a runner. And he did bust a couple of, and he busted a couple of nice runs, but like the way that he ran with patience, allowing the yards to come to young running backs, young athletic running backs, one of their biggest problem is often going too fast at the beginning,
Right.
not letting the play develop before they pick their gap to run through.
Well, and you just kind of hit it on the head, Jess. Like there's just so many times that runs are there that are missed because these guys don't understand, how to play, right? They don't know how to run. They don't understand the nuances of the game. And he runs like a veteran. And we joke about it quite a bit from an athleticism standpoint. And again, this is not a shot at him. I don't want anybody to think we're taking a shot.
He's not unathletic by any means.
No, but like, who he kind of reminds me of is like end of his career Emmitt Smith, right? Like that he knows how to get the yard still. It's just like he's not gonna outrun anybody to the corner, right? Like he's not gonna, like you said, he can still make big plays, but his big plays come from patience and letting things open up that other people just don't see, that they either get to too quickly or they change their angles or things of that nature. And so he's just such a good runner. He's just such a patient runner, and he's a guy that has earned the opportunity to continue to work. And if he doesn't, make it, he's earned his opportunity to play somewhere else because
for sure.
Because
have a guy that you can rely on third and fourth down who can pass block and can play special teams. That's a guy that plays in the league for a decade, although it doesn't isn't rich NFL standards, but you're a rich man if you play 10 years in the NFL.
10 years, probably $12 million, 6 different states, that type of life. And you and I understand it a little more because we're around it. But I don't think people understand the grind that a guy like, that Amari is going to have to go through.
It's a stressful life because you don't know if you have a job.
Well, it's not only that you don't know if you have a job, but you have to stay in shape. You have to pay for your own, workouts. You have to pay for your own nutrition and things of that nature. And if you want to continue to have the opportunity to do all of that, then by God, you've got to spend the money that you're making, right? And that is where he's going to be. But right now, he's an Arizona Cardinal, and he looks like he's got a great chance to stay an Arizona Cardinal, at least for this year. And like we said, I don't think either of us really saw that happening, but I don't think either of us think it's a bad thing if it does happen either.
No, absolutely not. I mean, he definitely has a role right now, and he's one of those guys that's hard to, because you can rely on him so much, you go other directions. On the defensive side of the ball, a player that is sticking around, and I noted this in spring. This is a guy to keep an eye on. Now, he's starting to see fewer first-team reps, but dadgum, if Starling Thomas still is in that mix, and, Max Melton is starting to get, and I saw it, and I think it was the first time Max Melton, their second-round pick, was getting some first-team reps in 11-on-11. But for the early part of camp, through the spring, and through some of camp still, it's Star Thomas who's playing on the first-team defense, and he is a guy that Jonathan Gannon really likes, which is going to make for a hard decision with the cornerback room. That's going to be extremely difficult if you're I have 6 in my 53-man roster projection right now because I don't see a way for them to not keep 6 based on what they have. You've got Sean Murphy-Bunting, lock. Garrett Williams, lock. Max Melton, second-round pick, lock. Elijah Jones, third-round pick, probably a lock. And then you've got Star Thomas and Keitrell Clark. Never mind the other guys on there, but Star Thomas, who played a lot last year, his PFF numbers, his coverage numbers, he gave up a lot. But Gannon loves his approach. He loves what he's done so far. And Keitrell Clark as well. And so, Clark hasn't flashed yet, but Gannon has praised how has he been approaching things, how he's looked. But Thomas is, he's whether he can make the team or not, I think he's quietly making life difficult. And that's a good thing. We like to see that. We like to see life being difficult for the decision makers when they're building a roster.
Well, and that's just it. Like we talked about with the wide receivers, they're making things difficult. They're making them make difficult decisions, and all that does is make this team better, right? Like you have guys that create or become hard guys to cut, not in the sense of like, oh, I really like him, but in the sense of like, oh, if we let him go, is he going to go? Is he going to haunt us? And I think that they're getting to that point finally where they might have at certain positions tough cuts to make. And again, that wasn't a conversation last year. That wasn't.
No, the cornerback room was raw and not good.
And so now it's like, okay, do they cut Keitrell Clark? Do they cut Starling Thomas? We felt coming in one of those guys had to go, and it just became a question of who they went with and what they felt was the most important thing. And by golly, I don't know the answer still, but I do know that we've seen a lot of good things out of Max Melton thus far. Something that gets us excited, and you have to look at that and think to yourself that, man, this could be a really special overall draft class when all is said and done.
Coming up next on Rise Here at Podcast, Best Our Cardinals Talk on the Web. Let's move on and talk about what there still is. So we've got the rest of this week. You've got the red and white practice, and then we've got next week before the preseason opener. What do we still want to see in camp and, of course, in the preseason? That's coming next on Rise Up See Red. We're back on the Rise Up See Red Podcast, the Best Our Cardinals Talk on the Web, talking Cardinals training camp. Now looking ahead to what do we still need to see? Now with pads on, it's tough. And now, depending on if Froholt misses time, the depth hasn't been tested, and so everyone's been getting their reps. They're just able to. Coaches are able to. They don't have to worry about overworking, underworking anyone. But I think what I would like to see over the next few days, or hearing out of camp, is to have some of the second and third unit players, because what we haven't had yet. That random young wide receiver or cornerback, none of those back of the roster guys have seemed to just
stand out
yet. It's been all of the guys that they're going to be the expected contributers, and so
we did have a small, very minuscule, great play by Xavier Weaver today. So recording Tuesday night, he made a hell of a catch, saved Clayton Tune another training camp interception. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, it's been kind of the status quo, which again, I don't think is a bad thing, because last year it was, who are going to be the guys, and now this year, like, oh, these are clearly
right.
the guys.
Yeah. But after over a decade of covering this team, and every year there's the guy that there's these guys that just capture the hearts of fans, whether it's an undrafted quarterback, whether it's a back of the room receiver or a pass rusher, the Vonterius Door to the Pete Roberts, like these guys that you're like, and maybe it's simply because we haven't played any preseason games yet that has happened. Like there was that linebacker out of Auburn, the super unathletic one out of Auburn a couple years ago, they loved him, but I mean, and it's not Owen Pappas the year, it was the year before him.
Yeah,
it was
I
the
know what you're
unathletic
talking about.
And
and that's typically what happens, right? And then, like you hinted at last week, you've got the pass rushers, right? The pass rushers that make their mark and people just fawn over, and they're like, how did he not make the roster? And you're like,
because he
because
was beating third team tackles.
yeah, he was beating
and
guys.
nothing in the run game.
Right. Chandler Wooten, by the way, is the name you're
That's it. Chandler Wooten. There were guys on your staff that were in love with Chandler Wooten.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like a lot of these guys, it's interesting to always follow their careers, because a lot of times they just don't do anything after they leave here, right? Or get let go. And Wooten's played 17 games in his career. He played 8 games last year. Um, he's played 47 total defensive snaps in his career. So, like, again, who is the one? Dora, right?
Vontario Story, yeah.
Yeah. He was around for a long time, just getting reps, and he had a 3-game run with the Cardinals, and no sacks, and played 67 career snaps. Like, these guys that have great preseasons don't always make it, and
it's what the UFL's for, man. The UFL.
well, and they can continue.
That's what I call, like, the UFL. You know what UFL is? It is preseason NFL. It's preseason game 3 for all their games.
You look at, like, the offensive player of the year, Hakeem Butler. He got chances at 3 different stops.
Yes, at 2 different positions and 3 different stops, and finally it kind of clicks. But yeah, that's where it is. If you look at the rosters up and down the UFL, and when it was the USFL and the XFL, littered with guys who were late preseason players. They just were not quite. They were players, 70 to 90 on a roster. They weren't quite practice squad worthy, or it's just I do want to see, and we saw it a little on Tuesday. And maybe I should have included Bijo Jalari as kind of the ones that guys are standing out. But like in one-on-ones against Jonah Williams, Bijo Jalari looked tremendous. But I guess that's probably going to be something more that we see in the preseason rather than camp, is to see some pass rushing juice. Because honestly, I don't think we want to see our tackles beat by our guys.
Yeah, and so that's the thing, is if these guys come out and play well, you don't feel bad about it, right? Like, but if they are getting stonewalled by other guys, all of a sudden you go, oh, this is not good. This is not what we need to see right now. So, we'll kind of see how that plays out. But like you said, I think what BJ's done so far has been impressive. We've seen him, look like a guy that can compete and be a force at the next level. Like you said, Jonah Williams hasn't been too hot. See if that changes over the next couple of weeks. So, there's a lot to watch and to see unfold over the next couple of weeks. And I'm interested because they're so, cloak and dagger with everything. How much do we see the starters playing much of it all?
I sincerely doubt it. So I was talking to Craig Rielu as we were walking out of the building on Sunday, and especially as we go to as we move towards an 18-game season. Those competitive practices, their joint practices, are kind of their starter reps, because the controlled environment you get against another team. But here are the guys that I expect will play not at all in the preseason. No Kyler, no Trey McBride, no James Conner, no Will Hernandez, no Paris, maybe not Jonah Williams. Probably not much of Yelda. Yelda might play a little. No Trey McBride, like I said. On the defensive side, I don't think Justin Jones or Bilal Nichols will play at all. I don't think we'll see Kaiser White,
or either
we'll see him at all. I don't. Yeah, either safety and maybe Sean Murphy Bunting, but because he's new, that's a possibility that they'll give him some reps. And I still think, like, like BJ and Zaven will both benefit with some reps in the preseason. But I don't expect. I mean, Matt Prater's going to have to kick,
right?
Because they don't have anyone else.
But that could also be something where they come in, right, and they end up bringing a guy in, just say, hey, these are going to be your kicks, and to show to NFL teams, like, good luck. And so, but it's interesting because, like you said, it's unlikely to see a lot of these guys, and so we'll see how that kind of unfolds, because this is just a completely different and new situation, because like we said last year, we knew the quarterbacks were going to have to play. We knew all these guys were going to have to get reps as much as possible, because we didn't really, they were still finding things out, and quite frankly, we knew they weren't going to be very good, right? And so now it's it's a little different. There's some expectations with what they did to end the year, what they've done this off season, in terms of, just like you said, this kind of new, different vibe around the team, and so all of that creates this really kind of fun and different chance here that we just haven't seen in quite some time.
And another factor into that for preseason playing time is the fact that their next week is a joint practice, which is where and how Gannon handled things last year, that week against Minnesota, that's when they got their starters, their competitive reps against another team. And so you'll probably won't, like, those key starters won't, but they will get the full load of practice in the joint practice against the Colts twice that week. And the other thing to that's why we won't see Kyler, because both Desmond Ridder and Clayton Tune need reps in the offense.
Yeah, I mean, we're not being mean when we say this. And I think I can't decide if I'm more disappointed that Tune hasn't developed at all, or that Ridder looks like he doesn't belong on an NFL roster. But yeah, they both desperately need to get more reps before the season, because that's really all you can say, right?
That's kind of been unremarkable, but hey, I mean, we'll see how that plays out. And with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up this edition of the Rise of Seaward podcast, the best of Cardinals talk on the web. This has been episode 572. The first, and I think it'll probably be the only one this week with Seth and I. We will lean into what next week, going into the preseason game. Like, Seth and I will probably do one show over the next couple weeks, each week, and then I think we'll need to, before roster cuts, we probably will need to get on a show for final or before the final preseason game, do our roster predictions, since they'll have to do that after that, and roster cuts come on a Tuesday.
Yeah,
so we can then immediately react to the roster cuts as well.
Yeah,
so
we'll definitely probably get back to twice a week once
the season starts.
Once there's something to talk about, after games and before.
And in the meantime, Howard, over the next every day that there's practice, we'll have some more updates. That's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Root. Thanks for listening. As always, we'll be back again soon. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up, See Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms, so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up, Red Sea, be Red, See Red, and of course, Rise Up, See Red.
Rise!